everybody. Welcome to the Database Security Office Hours on the Ask Tom platform. I'm your host. My name is Richard Evans, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Bettina. Welcome, Bettina. Bettina
Thanks.
is
Thanks
our
for having me,
product
Rich.
manager. Yeah, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
Bettina is the product manager of Oracle DataSafe, our cloud native solution. And so we're excited to have her talk about some of the new capabilities in DataSafe today. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome. We hold this session on the second Wednesday of every month at 10 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Pacific. Um, Anybody can join this session, and we generally have announcements, talk about upcoming events. We have a technical session, which Bettina will lead today, and then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. If your question is relevant, we might take it kind of as we go. We'll see. Bettina's got a live demo here, so it should be pretty fun to see that. And then we've got 5+ years worth of recordings out there at asktom.oracle.com. So check that out. So some brief announcements here. I try to put everything we talk about today in our GitHub repository, which I'll share in the Zoom chat. And it is a cheat sheet for what we talk about, links to things, so you don't have to try to write them down or take a picture, memorize them. This recording will be available. I'm gonna try to get it up here before AI World because we're gonna be in Las Vegas starting next week. So check out that Ask Tom on GitHub. Every month we talk about patching. Please stay up to date on patching. Quarterly patches will come available next week, I believe. And any kind of patching, whether it's database, application, operating system, network, it's important to stay on top of those patches. So check out the patch notes on My Oracle support. Fleet patching and provisioning is really neat if you're a rack customer and you want to do gold images of grid infrastructure or database. And then, as always, Mike Dietrich is kind of the source of all information related to patching and upgrading. So I'm pretty sure he has some sessions at AI World too that you'd want to check out. So speaking of sessions, check us out in Las Vegas the 13th through 16th of October. Hopefully you're registered. If you're not, you still have time to join us. We're going to have hands-on labs. Bettina is actually going to be leading two hands-on labs related to Oracle Data Safe. It's pretty exciting. And then we've got 6+ sessions that we're involved in related to Oracle database security and kind of what's going on protecting your data. And then stop by the booth. So I think I'll be spending a lot of time at the booth. Bettina will be joining me occasionally. And booth 611 is where we're at. So don't forget to stop by, say hi. I'm gonna try to give out some stickers, unofficially stickers. So that QR code on the screen will take you to our list of sessions and labs and everything. So you can take a picture of that. We'll have that available to you. But yeah, please join us next week. Stop by, say hi, and we look forward to seeing you in Las Vegas. So Bettina, I'm gonna turn it over to you now.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this month's Ask Tom session. So today, as Rich said, we want to talk about data save, and you might have seen announcements. We did quite a few enhancements for really managing your entire fleet, so what we call security at scale. Um, in August, end of August, that was rolled out. We have, the first customers obviously leveraging it. So I just wanted to share what we do there. Before I go into the details, just a recap if you're not that familiar with DataSafe. So DataSafe is our cloud service for managing your security and your compliance for your Oracle databases. It comes with comprehensive security features. The good thing is you don't need any special security expertise for using DataSafe. It gives you immediate insights into any risks that you have in the configuration of your database, the users who are accessing the database, so how much, privileges do these users have, what data can they see, and then also the sensitivity of the data that you're storing in your database. And as I said, the last release was really focused around on making security management at scale much simpler for you. So where you can do, security settings, certain policies really for your fleet or for, we'll also talk about target groups later, where you can really manage that for larger groups of your databases. Good. With that, so if you think about an Oracle database, what are the things you need to do when you think about security, right? You need to enable or configure certain things. So what are those? So you need to decide which audit policies you want to have enabled on your database. What are the database activity you want to track? How long do you need to keep your audit records, right? Are there certain regulations or certain corporate policies that define how long you need to keep your audit records? This might be 2 years or 3 years, or there are certain regulations that ask you to keep the audit records for 7 years. Then what are the security assessments? So security assessment obviously is where we check, your configuration to make sure you don't have any risk in the configuration that would introduce, unnecessary risks for, attackers and so on. So here you can then decide, do you want to do an entire check? Are there certain compliance checks that you want to do? And then if you're already on a 23 AI database, then you might know we also have the SQL firewall. It's built into the core. But if you want to use it, then also you need to enable the SQL firewall. You need to configure your policies and so on. Then when it comes to reviewing or monitoring your database, you want to make sure you don't have any configuration drifts, right? So let's assume you made your database really secure, all the configuration is up to par, and then you have a maintenance. Someone is changing a setting and then they forget to change it back after the maintenance. So this is where configuration drifts might happen, right? How do you know that someone changed something and that it's drifted away from what you have approved previously? Do you have any non-compliant findings, right? Let's say you're following all the CIS standards or STIC, do you have anywhere a finding in your database that is not compliant? Where is sensitive data stored? If you think about sensitive data and all the regulations across the globe now, obviously, you need to protect your sensitive data even more than ever before. So first of all, you need to know where is it stored in your database? Where do you store credit card information or other personal identifiable information? Then for your non-productive environments, you want to check if you have master data, right? Before, let's say you let or any developers on the development system, did you make sure when it's a copy of your production environment, did you make sure to anonymize the sensitive information, right? That you're not exposing your customer data or employee data to your developers or any testers that are on these non-productive environments. Then database activity, right? So what database activity happened on my database? Are there certain things you need to provide to your auditors that they want to see? And then last but not least, if you're using SQL Firewall, you also want to monitor if there are any SQL Firewall violations. And this is obviously something you don't have to do for just one database, but basically for your entire fleet. So now with DataSafe, one of the enhancements we're doing is we're introducing what we call target database groups. So let's assume you have your mission critical databases, you have some other production databases, and you have maybe development databases. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'm sorry for my voice here. So what you can do now is, you can group those databases depending on the security needs that you have for those databases. So coming back to what we just said is now your audit policies that you have for your mission critical databases is probably pretty strict. You're monitoring a lot of the database activity. You're monitoring probably your database admins, any highly privileged users, what are they doing on the database? For your other production databases, you might have less strict audit policies. Maybe you're not monitoring as much. And then for your development databases, maybe you have just a few basic audit policies that you want to enable. So now with DataSafe, you can do that per target group, what we call target group. The same goes with retention policies. Your mission critical databases and your business databases, you probably want to keep the audit records for longer. Again, depending on any regulations or corporate policies you have to follow, that might be, up to 7 years. And then for your development databases, most likely you're just keeping the audit records maybe for a year or maybe even for just 6 months. So you can define that for each of these groups. Security assessment checks, if you're familiar with DataSafe, we have over 120 or 130 checks that we do to really make sure that your database is configured securely. But here also you can then decide, am I interested in all those checks or is it just a subset of the checks that I have to follow? Maybe you just want to make sure they're CIS compliant, or maybe you have to make sure they're STIC compliant. So those are the things you can then configure for each of the database groups. When it comes to reviewing or monitoring, you want to know for each of those groups, do I have any configuration drift in my database? But you can also monitor that for your entire fleet. So We give you different options there how to look at the data by target group or for your entire fleet. The same goes for non-compliant findings. You can check each database group separately, or you can look at the entire fleet here. Sensitive data, same thing. You can have a fleet-wide view on where do you store sensitive information, or for which of my non-production databases have I masked my data. And then last but not least, also the database activity. Obviously, you can check for your entire fleet if you're looking for certain activities, certain things happening in the database. Same with SQL violations. You can check that for your entire fleet or also specifically for each target database groups. So target database groups, this is one of the enhancements we have now rolled out this summer. So here you can, group your databases depending on your database or your security needs. And just to give you some ideas here, it could be, maybe you want to group your production versus non-production databases. Or maybe you have certain applications running on top, right? Where you want to have groups for, let's say, your EBS systems versus your SAP systems, where, you want to know where sensitive data is stored, but it looks different in an EBS system where it's stored than, let's say, on an SAP system. You might have to follow certain regulations, right? If you have HIPAA data, you might want to group your databases that have HIPAA data or that have to follow HIPAA in one group and so on. What we offer in DataSafe, we have flexible conditions on how you can group your databases. So you can use compartments or you can use tags. You can also select certain databases directly. But let's say if you're using compartments or tags, let's say, hey, I have a tag that is production or non-production, then your database will be added to that database group automatically. If you're saving them in a certain compartment, it would be added automatically to that target database groups. And then once we have that, that will also enable us later on to really enforce consistent policies or monitor compliance across those target groups. Coming to the first enhancement that we've done. So the first enhancement we've done is for security assessment. Just to recap, what is security assessment? So here we're really checking for the security posture of your database. We're going over all these different configurations that you have in your database. And if you think about an Oracle database, there are probably hundreds of settings that can influence the security of your database or impact the security. So here we give you a very comprehensive checklist where we're saying, hey, we found some high risk or medium risk in your configuration. We show you exactly what are those risks. We show you also across the fleet, where did we find high risk? What are those high risks? Which databases are impacted and so on. So for each of the databases that you register in DataSafe, we always do the entire check. But what we have now introduced is we're now introducing security assessment templates. And as you can see on the right, we have some predefined templates. So this is, we have one template that consists of all the checks that we always delivered. But now we've also broken it down by the standard. So if you just have to make sure your databases are CIS compliant, there is now a CIS template for that. If you just have to make sure your database is STIC compliant, then there is also a specific STIC template for that. As you can see, we also have a GDPR template and then one with Oracle recommended practices. The other thing that we have introduced is now you can also create your custom templates. So I talked to one of my customers the other day and he's like, yeah, we're typically following CIS standard, but there are 2, 3 additional checks that we have to do. So you can then also build your own custom template out of all the checks that we have. You can select the ones that are relevant for you. So you can start, let's say, with a CIS template and then add additional checks that you need, or you can just build, your corporate template as you need. Once you have the template, you can now apply it to a target group, and then we're checking against those checks for your target group. And then what you get is we have this what we call target group assessment now, where we show you immediately out of all the targets in that target group, you have then, how many of your databases are not compliant with all those findings. How many findings had something, where or which of the checks had non-compliant findings. And then you can drill down as you are used to it from DataSafe, where you can then say, hey, show me those non-compliant databases. For each of the databases, what are the checks that failed? And then you get the details with, what can I do to remediate the risk here? Why is this important to do, and so on. So this is a new thing we have now in security assessment. So let me also show you this live in the system. So if you're on security assessment, this is what you're familiar with. You have your high risk, your medium risk. You can always drill down, see, hey, what are the high risk across my fleet? How many targets are impacted by that risk? And then you can always drill down to see more specifics for each of the databases here, for instance. So this is what you're familiar with, hopefully. But if I go back now, we also have this new entry on the left that's called assessment templates. So if I go here, these are exactly the templates that I just talked about. We have the all checks template. We also have one that is just for all the CIS relevant checks. So you always see the reference here. Where is this check coming from? And here you see this is, all of them have some references to CIS here. So this is what you see here. And then, as I said, you can also easily build your own templates. So let me show you that as well. So we have these custom templates. There's already one that was created, but I can easily just create my own one. Let's say this is my corporate template. And then I can say, hey, let me start with the CIS checks because I know I have to follow all of them, for instance. And then I can add more checks and I can say, hey, I'm adding checks from the all checks template or for any of the others. And then you just select the ones that you want to add here. And this is how you create your own check. Okay, now if I have a template, I can apply it to a target group. And I've already done that here for one of my target databases. So let me show you that. So here now I see this is for this target database group. And I just realized I haven't shown you target database group, so I'll do that next. But here I have a target database group that is called CIS compliance database group. Here I see now I have 4 databases that are not compliant with all those checks. So let me show you these. So I have an HRDB, a finance DB, and so on. I see, in 3 of the databases, I have eight findings. HRDB has 18 findings, also with a higher severity. So this is where I can start now. I can look at that. I see the details of what are the checks that failed, and then I can obviously look into more details here. Just open one of them, doesn't matter which one. And then you get more details. And then as you're used to security assessment here, you also get more remarks on, why this is an issue, what you can do about it, and so on. The other way of looking at it is if you scroll down here, we also show you, what are the checks that failed, how many databases failed that check. If you scroll here, for instance, I have one check where a couple of my databases failed the check. I can check here, oh, it's the finance DB, the sales order DB, payroll DB. I already get some summary information here. And then same thing, you can click on here to get more details for this specific database. Now, as I just realized, I forgot about target database groups. So let me show you that as well. So if you're on the DataSafe console, you have our target databases, which you're familiar with. But now we also have one entry that's called target database groups. And then here you can now build your database groups. So this one I just showed you, the CIS compliance database group. So here, for instance, I have 4 databases that are that are a member here. Let me show you another group also. Let's say the finance compliance database here. I also have 4 databases here that are part of my group. And then if you want to see what are the conditions, when would a target database added to my group, you see that here. So I have selected every database that is in the compartment finance will automatically be added to my target group. What that means is if I register a new target database, it will automatically land in this target database group. It would automatically be added to the CIS compliance check that I just showed you, and then also to some other things that we're going to talk about later. Good. If you want to change the conditions, you can always add more conditions here. As I said, at the moment we have, you can do that on compartment based, or if you have specific tags for your databases, you can select them here and add that. So if you have a new target database with the same tag, it would also be automatically added. Or the other choice is where you can select also databases directly from your list of databases here. So that was security assessment. So you have now the security assessment templates. You can apply them to a target group, and then you get at a glance which of your databases are not compliant with that template or which of them failed any checks. Oh, one thing I haven't mentioned yet, and for each of those checks, you can also, let me go back here real quick. You can also set then the baseline. So you can decide let me go back to our. So here you also see I have a baseline assigned to it. So here you can then also say, hey, this is what I expect, right? All these checks should have a pass. But if I see something where maybe I'm also okay with a low risk, you can go in here, you can say, hey, you know what? I'm accepting a low risk. As long as it's not a medium risk or high risk, I'm okay with it. So you can also change the baseline here, depending on your needs here. Then the other enhancements we've done are on auditing. So if you're familiar with the user activity auditing in DataSafe, so that has several parts, right? We allow you to collect your audit records centrally in DataSafe. So if you start the audit collection where all your registered databases, we're bringing in the audit records from those databases into DataSafe. They're centrally stored. We have predefined audit reports, predefined alerts that you can then use to analyze the data. You can always also build your own custom reports or custom alerts on top of the data. And then now what we have done on top of that is you could already, enable or disable audit policies from DataSafe, but now we allow you to do that not just for a single database, but for your target database group. So what we introduced now is what we call the security policy management. So in one of the security policy managements, you basically defining what are the audit policies that should be active on my target database. So you're saying, hey, I want to have basic auditing. I want to track admin activity or any thing the admins are doing on the database. You might want to check user entitlement changes. So you define these audit policies in the security policy, and then you can take the entirety of the security policy and deploy it to your target database group. And what that does is it's creating the audit policy if it doesn't exist on the database, and then it's enabling the audit policy, which basically means we're now enforcing the consistent audit policies across your target database group. Security policies, we now started, as you can see on the slide, for unified audit policies. We're adding more and more there. So we're adding also the SQL firewall policy to our security policy. We're adding alert policies, and there will be more that's coming later on once we're adding more and more capabilities to really manage anything database security related in those security policies. There's one more thing in auditing. Let me show you that as well, and then we can also go over to the live demo here. So the other thing we have introduced for audit groups, for target groups, is now the audit profile. So if you remember in an audit profile in DataSafe, you basically configure how long you want to keep your audit records. So you let us know how long you want to keep them online in DataSafe. You let us know how long you want to keep them in the fully managed archive in DataSafe, so our offline retention. And then you also let us know if you want to use the data collection or the audit collection in the paid mode or unpaid mode. If you might recall that up to 1 million audit records per database per month are included in your cloud subscription, so you don't have to pay extra for that. But if you ever have a database that generates more audit records in a given month, do you want to still collect beyond that free limit? So that's what you're defining in the audit policy. So let me go back to our live system. So let's go over to these new security policies. So here you see we also have predefined audit policies already out of the box. So if you want to track admin activity, we have a predefined policy for that. If you want to track basic auditing, we have a predefined policy for that. And you see we have policies for CIS, audit recommendations, Oracle defined or policies that we deliver with the Oracle databases. We have one for stick and so on. And same thing, you can always build your own ones. But let me show you what this looks like. So if I'm selecting the one, for instance, for basic auditing, and I check which are the audit policies that are part of this security policy, then we see, hey, this one will track the audit policy for database schema changes. We're enabling the login failure audit policy, one for login events, and one for critical database activity. If you want to know what is this audit policy, you can always click on one here and then check on this one. And then you see, hey, this is how my audit policy looks on the database. So we're creating an audit policy that will track all the actions on log on, for instance. And then in this specific case, it will only track it if there was a failure. So this is the login failure audit policy that you have here. You can also build your own custom policies. So let me show you that as well. So for instance, I created one that I called corporate policies here. So let me show you what are the unified audit policies that I have in here. So I'm also tracking critical database activities for all my users. I'm tracking specifically admin user activities for certain users. I'll show you that in a moment. And then I'm also tracking login failures for all my users. This is very similar to what we just looked at. And then the admin user activities here, for instance, I'm only tracking for my admin users, so not for all my users, but just for the ones that we have identified as admin users. Same here, if I want to know what is the policy behind it, you can just click on that and let me show you. And this is the audit policy that would be created on your database if it doesn't exist already. Then once I have my audit policies, oops, sorry, just wanted to stay here for a second. If I have my audit policies now configured and I know, where which ones I want to enforce in a certain target group, then I can go ahead and here on top you see I have the deploy button and then I'm just selecting my target group, for instance, this one, and then it will be deployed automatically to all the target databases in this target group already done that. So let me show you that. And then here you see the summary of where was it deployed. And you see I already deployed it to my finance compliance group. It has a green state, which is great. So you can go in here and then you see, hey, there were no deployment issues. So everything went smoothly. All the audit policies are now configured here. And let me show you that for the finance databases. So let me go back here. And remember, this one was called let's go back here to so this is the corporate policies, right? So if I go back now here on activity auditing and I'll check the audit policies that are now active on my finance databases. So let's use this one, the finance SA database. So now you see, yes, the ones that I have in my corporate policies, they're now active. I have the login events here. If I go to the next page, I also have the critical database activity and the admin user activity listed here. If anything would go wrong on the deployment, you would see that they're listed. You would see each database where we had a conflict. You would see which policy we couldn't deploy, what was the reason, so you can fix that and then redeploy it. The other thing that we talked about, let me show you that as well, is in the activity auditing, the audit profile. So here now for the audit profile, I can set the audit profiles per target database, but I also have created one now for my target database group, the finance compliance group. And here you can see I've set it to, I want to keep the audit records 12 months online in DataSafe. I want to keep them an additional 36 months, so 3 years in the offline archive of DataSafe. And yes, I definitely want to collect all the audit records, even if it would go over that free limit. So this is what I now created for my database group, which is the finance compliance group. So now if I check what are actually the settings in my finance database, and I'm in the wrong compartment to show my databases, hold on. So for this one, for instance, for the finance SA database, now you see, yes, this has now a setting of 12 months for online. It has a setting of 36 for offline. And you see where it's coming from. And this is, if you remember, this is the audit profile for the target group that I just showed you. So this is where the settings are coming from.
Hey, Bettina,
Yeah.
if you add a database to a target group, will it automatically apply those audit policies?
Yes. So if you're adding a target database to the group, either you do it manually or because of the conditions, you register database and it will be added automatically. There are certain things that are done automatically. So the audit policies that were deployed on the target group will be deployed to that target database, yes, automatically. The other thing is if you have a template, a security assessment template applied to that target group, automatically that target database will be included in those checks for the target database group for that template. And also the audit profile settings. So the online and offline retention settings are deployed automatically. I
Nice.
actually just recorded a demo for AI World yesterday that shows that. So if we have time at the end, I'll show that little demo that shows, hey, I'm adding a database and these are the things that happen automatically. Good question. And
Super cool.
hopefully, I think we should have enough time so I can show you that little demo as well.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Good. Then there is one more thing that we have added. So this is for auditing. And then one more thing we have added is what we call attribute sets. So attribute sets, and I already showed you one without you noticing. So we have one predefined audit attribute set that's called the admin user set. So what you can do with attribute sets is basically you can create a list of values that you want to use in audit report filters, that you want to use in the enablement conditions for the unified audit policies that I just showed you. And here on the bottom, you also see what are the different types that we're supporting, so database user, database objects, and so on. How can you use it? Let's assume you want to create a list of all the sensitive objects where you want to, have a special look at and you want to track, let's say, activities on those objects. Could be an employee database, right? Or could be a customer database or something. You can create that list in your database objects attribute set. And then in the audit report, you would just use, hey, filter for all activity on this attribute set on my, let's say, sensitive database objects, for instance. So let me show you this one as well. Where you find it is if you click here on data save, you see we have target databases. We just looked at target database groups, and there's one new entry which is called attribute sets. So here there is one that is always configured for you, which is the admin user set. You don't see too much, but what we're doing here for each of your databases, we're analyzing, who are the users who have certain really highly privileged or high privileges that we consider to be then admin users, right? And that's done automatically for you, and then you can use those that attribute set in your filters, in your audit reports, for instance. I also have created a couple other ones here just to show you, for instance, or let me show you how you can create one. So let's say you want to create a new one. Let's say this is for database objects. And as you see, I already created one for sensitive objects, but let's just assume we want to create another one. Then you decide, what type is this? So this one is for database objects, as we said. And then I can add values manually. I can say, hey, I want to track this is my employees table. Maybe I have a customers table and, whatever else. So you can do that here. Or you can use information from the audit records that we already have. So you can also filter here, show me all the database objects that you have in your audit records. And then you can just select from here, or we can, let me show you for another example. If we say this is for database users, it automatically brings you, what are the database users that we see in the audit records. So you don't have to go in and check everything, but you can then just select it from here. Let's say I want to track the DB, SNMP, or the ODSIS, or, you probably have way more users in your environment than I do on this one. And this is how you can then create your own attribute set. So I have one that I created here, very simple. I have one where I have sensitive information, employees table, customers table, locations table. And this is now what I can use in my audit reports, first of all. So let me show you that, how you would do that. So if I'm on any of my reports, and let's just use the all activity, now I can add a filter. And let me go back a little bit longer in time. So now I can say, hey, I'm interested in any operation on a certain object. Um, and I'm a little bit blind. I don't see it. Hold on. Oh, there's object. And I don't want to specify the objects, but I want to use the attribute set. So now I can say, hey, show me all the operations, all the activity on the attribute set that I called sensitive objects. You apply your filter here, and then it filters for any operations on, as we can see here, the employees table, the customers table, or the locations table. So this is how you can use it here in a, oh yeah, there were some on the locations table as well. So this is how you can use attribute sets. The other option obviously is to say, hey, I want to check for everything that is not in the attribute set. So for instance, I could say my database users, I want to track any activity for any users that is not an admin user, for instance, right? Same thing here. It filters then. So in attribute set, not in attribute set is the new value set we have added here for operators. The other area where you can use it, and I already showed you without you noticing, hopefully. So if I go back to my security policy that I showed you earlier, and let me find the one that I created. Sorry, I'm in a different compartment, so I see a little bit more here now. Where is my corporate? I'm blind. Let me switch to my compartment. That makes it easier. If you remember, I showed you the unified audit policies here. And now if I click on admin user activities, I already use the attribute set here. So for instance, here I'm tracking all the activities, and here is the policy that I'm tracking, right? I'm tracking all this, basically all actions here for any user that is in this admin user set. So this is the predefined one that we're delivering out of the box that you can now also use here in your enablement conditions for audit policies. Was the new enhancements. So now, because you asked, right, what happens if I register a database? Let me actually, didn't even plan on doing that, but I actually recorded the demo yesterday, so I can show you that. So what I did yesterday is I created a new database in DataSafe. So I registered a database. I used our registration visits. You'll see here in a second. So I did register an autonomous database. And you're familiar with this one. Probably I select the database from the drop down here. I give it a certain name in DataSafe. So that is the Finance SA that we've seen in my demo environment. I registered the database here. The database is now active on my console. And now what happened? Because this database is saved in the finance compartment, I have a target group for finance, and you see this database was automatically now added to the database. And that is because every database in the finance compartment is automatically added to this database. So now a couple other things happened as well. So security assessment, because I have a target group assessment for my finance databases, it was automatically included here in that check as well. So if you click on it, I already have the findings now for Finance SA. I see there was one non-compliant findings. I can check that. And this database has users with unlimited concurrent user sessions. I also see which are those users, but it was automatically added to that target group assessment. The other thing that happened is because I had a security policy already deployed for this target group, now also this Finance SA database, and I showed you that earlier, automatically got the security policy or the unified audit policies from from this corporate policy applied automatically when I added it to the to DataSafe. So yeah, good question. Yes, these are things that are happening automatically. I didn't include here, yeah, I didn't include here the audit profile, but audit profile I showed you earlier also that happened. So this hopefully makes it so much easier to manage your security at scale. Demo we've done. As a summary, what are the new things we have introduced? So we have now the target database groups, right? Where you can group your databases based on what security requirements you have. Might be production versus non-production, might be application based, it might be certain regulations that you have to follow and so on. And what I just showed you, if you're using our flexible conditions, as soon as you add the database to a certain compartment, to certain tags, we can add it automatically to that target database group. Then for security assessment, we have the new templates with baselines where you can then define, what are the checks that my databases have to be compliant against, and then also set the baseline. Do I accept only pass? Do I accept low risk? Or what is the level of checks that or the level of severity that I accept? Also, automatically, it will add it to the target database group assessment, obviously. Then we have the centralized security policies. I showed you within a security policy, you can now configure your audit policies and then automatically or deploy it to a target group. And then as soon as you add a target to that target group, we automatically deploy those audit policies as well. So you don't have to write scripts anymore. Hey, if I create my database, these are the policies that I have to enable with scripts and so on. You can now do that easily in DataSafe. And then audit profiles, we showed you, right? Now you can set the retention periods for your target group. And then same thing, when you add the target, automatically the audit profile settings will be applied to that target. And then just overall, as you know, everything is purpose-built for Oracle databases. So, if you think about CIS standard or, stick, we already have done the translation, so to speak, from, taking the CIS rules or benchmarks and have translated what that means for an Oracle database and have included those checks here.
I was going to show folks how to get to the hands-on lab. So if you
Yeah.
Google DataSafe LiveLabs, it's the first result here for the fundamentals. So this will kind of walk you through a lot of what Bettina was talking about today, give you some idea of how to use DataSafe. And the neat thing is if you want to run it on our Oracle LiveLab environment, you can get this environment for 2 to 3 hours or so at a time and kind of walks you through the instructions on how to use DataSafe, how to set it up, configuration, assessing users, discovering sensitive data. So really, really powerful stuff and a nice lab here. And Bettina will be doing something similar at AI World.
Yep. Yeah, if you're at AI World, and you want to join us, please do. We even in the Live Lab, we also show SQL Firewall, how you can use that in DataSafe. So especially if you don't have a 23 AI database right now, our sandbox environment will have a 23 AI database. We have one lab that also shows you how to manage the SQL Firewall in DataSafe.
Cool.
And then obviously the other features that I just showed you as well. Oh yeah, one thing. So you showed the fundamental Live Labs. So there is one more in Live Lab for DataSafe that is called Integrate. I think
Ooh, let's
Integrate
see.
with Live Labs.
Let's do DataSafe.
Yeah.
And we've got integrate DataSafe with applications.
Yeah, yeah, that one. So that also has examples on how to use our interfaces. So how you can use, let's say, yeah, that one you can only run in your own environment, but that's using, how you can use our CLI commands, for instance, for downloading reports from DataSafe, how you can use the REST API to copy audit records from the to an object storage from DataSafe and so on. So lots of good examples on how to use our REST APIs or CLI commands.
And then we talked about live labs. So we've got 30 plus live labs out here. I'd highlighted DBSat on here, the QR code, but as Bettina talked about, the checks from DBSat are built into DataSafe and AVDF, plus a whole lot more in DataSafe and AVDF as well. So, hey, you're on the second Wednesday conversation. So thanks for joining us today. And then we've got our ebook out there as well. So if you want to read an ebook, it's not too detailed and it's not too theoretical. So it's a nice balance of how we think about database security. That's out there at oracle.com/securing the database. And then I want to point out here that next month we're going to kick off a second series for Oracle Database Security. And we're going to be covering the Asia Pacific, Japan region again. So we're going to have better times. So if you're watching this in replay, you'll be able to watch it live come November. So we'll start that in November. And then you can check out the recordings on asktom.oracle.com. Like I said, I'm going to try to get it out there here maybe this week, early next week. I've got to get it out before we go to AI World next week. So that's the goal. And then again, you can continue the conversation with us. Feel free to email me if you have any questions after this. I can introduce you to Bettina via email. If you're at AI World, stop by the booth or stop by our sessions and say hi. And you can find the links and notes out on the GitHub page.